You say, baby, turn the light out. I can see there's something crying in your smile now. It used to be the glitter in the dirt. Now you say it's just you feel a little dusty. Why didn't anybody tell you that it ain't easy? Life don't imitate reality TV. I can see you tugging on a wishbone, angle hanging out. Come bones will only break through words. But you don't know that it beats my heart to black and blue all over when you cry. It burns like paper cuts and iodine. But when you were here, I couldn't find the words to say I'll be your lullaby singer. I won't let you down. I promise I'll try and try and lullaby, lullaby. But when you were here, I couldn't find the words to say I'll be your lullaby singer. I won't let you down. I promise I'll try and try and lullaby, 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 lullaby. Baby, turn the light out. Baby, turn the light out. Baby, turn the light out. You say, baby, turn the light out.
Ashley Anderson, you have a question.
After your diagnosis, were you even depressed?
Yeah, when I first got paralyzed, I was super depressed. I thought that my life was over because I thought, oh, wow, well, what am I going to do without my legs? Like, how am I going to continue on with my life? I was 15 years old, so I was like a teenager and I was trying to fit in with everybody else, especially at that age, trying to find my identity. And I look back and I'm really grateful that I got paralyzed at that age, actually, because it did give me the opportunity to grow into my identity that includes the wheelchair. So it doesn't feel like it's something that happened to me, it's a part of me. And I think that's the case with anything that happens to us in life. It becomes a part of us. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, okay, my life's going to be a little differently, work a little differently. And I love, love, love to problem solve. Like, that's like my thing. I love puzzles. I love figuring things out. I love riddles. So when I started to look at getting back into my life as a wheelchair user, I realized like these were all puzzles. Like, okay, I have to figure out how to get into the shower again, and I have to figure out how to get my shoes on again. And there were all ways to do it. It was just going to be a little bit of problem solving. And so I started to really get out of my depression for that. I started to focus on all the things that I could do and how to do them. And then I started to move on. Didn't stay in the depression for that long after that. Good question.
Yeah, definitely a really wonderful one. Tele Gallagher.
Hey, thanks, Mia. Very cool, everyone.
Hello.
I did catch a little bit of the Push Girls reunion the other week, and last night actually I watched, I think it was season 1, episode 2 that featured your dance team. So I just watched a little bit of that.
Awesome.
Since you were being featured today.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of thinking with your line of work, your work with advocacy, your work with obviously being a reality TV star, your work with graphic designing. There's a lot of communicating and relating to people, of course, not just yourself, but the outside world. I was just curious, what do you wish you better understood? And what do you wish people better understood about you?
That's a really good question. I wish that I understood a little bit more of people's mindsets when they don't accept difference. I mean, I see difference as something beautiful. I want people to know that about me, is that I don't see difference as something depressing or something that's holding me back or something that means I can't, and So I wish other people would know that about me, so that maybe in turn they could take that mindset on themselves and say, well, she doesn't feel sorry for herself, so why should I? And that, I mean, there's that connection there where I think we have our, I really can't understand the concept of not embracing difference and beauty, because we all have different fingerprints for a reason. We're not supposed to be the same. We're not supposed to all be the same thing and have the same purpose and the same life. We all have different tools. We all have different people. Like there's so many different variations in everybody's life, and that to me is humanity. That's beautiful. Like that should be celebrated. So yeah, I wish more people knew that about stuff. And also I think when it comes to positivity, I think a lot of people think that I'm like faking positivity. I've had people be like, well, how can you be so happy? I mean, like, you're in a wheelchair, you know? And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, this is, you know, a wheelchair is just a tool to help me do what I want to do. Like, there's nothing bad about that. So I legitimately feel grateful and happy in my life. And it does not have to do with me trying to put up a front for any reason to make other people happy or think that a wheelchair is cool. I just literally feel that I'm a happy person no matter what, whether I'm in the chair or not.
Yeah, well, you certainly project that, so that's very genuine and believable. So.
Thank you. I hope that people don't. It's funny because I'm obviously still friends with, like, you know, my best friends that knew me before I was paralyzed and after. And I've never really quite asked them, but I would hope that they would say that I haven't changed as a person before and after, except for getting a little more mature. But yeah, as far as mindset, I feel like I've always kind of had that, you know, that problem solving, push through anything kind of.
To some degree, we're all supposed to change naturally, right? To some degree, right?
That's what they say is equivalent to death. If you're not growing and you're not changing, yeah, what's the point? Yeah.
Now, like what you're saying now and what you've been talking about, you one of the things you do is public speaking.
Yes.
And how did you get into that? And because it's so, I mean, listening to you now lifts me up and makes me go, oh, okay, yes.
Well, it's funny. I had always wanted to do it, but I definitely didn't think of it as a career. Mm-hmm. So I had kind of gone into, I had originally majored in broadcast journalism at University of Florida, and then I changed my major to production for TV, film, and radio. And it was kind of in radio. I had a job in college in radio, and I thought, oh, I kind of like talking. What I was really fascinated the most with was the fact that the media can be such a broadcasting tool to get the right messaging out. So I knew that I wanted to speak on what I had gone through and what I've learned always. And then I also knew that I always wanted to do media. I didn't know how the two would really come together until Push Girls, honestly. When Push Girls started and we did the press tours and we did all the interviews on different channels and shows and even in person, we did a lot of screenings. That's when it kind of hit me where I was like, oh, well, this is good practice for this. And then I had, you know, some name recognition from that, and it was easier to get my name out there and to kind of travel and go to different towns and cities all around the country and meet other people that that had never even met somebody in a wheelchair, frankly. Maybe they had just seen the show and learned about something about themselves by watching and saying, oh, well, I can relate even though I'm not in a wheelchair, you know? So it was really cool to go out and meet other people throughout the entire country that learned something and took off from there. It really did. It made me connect with more audiences and broaden up my messaging. And now it's one of the things that I can't imagine not doing in my life. I really love it. And it's a huge, huge reason and purpose for things that I do ultimately when I'm working on goals.
Blair Webb.
Hi. How was it? Hi. Hi, I'm Blair.
What's up, Blair?
How is it to be on the Ellen show? How was it to be on the Ellen show?
Oh, on the Ellen show, that was really fun. So me and Angela from Push Girls were on Ellen when we got interviewed. That was a really interesting experience because you would think that maybe we would be nervous about getting interviewed by Ellen or meeting Ellen because we didn't meet her ahead of time. It was literally like on the show, we kind of came out and met her in the interview. And you'd think we would have been nervous kind of about that, but me and Angela were just really nervous about our spasms in our legs because we had these like heels on our shoes, and both Angela and I have leg spasms. And once our leg spasms start going, like it's really hard to get them like back on our foot plate and like, you know, not to like take a minute to get adjusted. And, you know, there was this ramp we had to go up, and it's like we were both like, oh my gosh, our spasms are gonna happen, and then we're gonna get stuck on the ramp, and then, you know, all these scenarios that we were like thinking. That was what we were worried about the whole time, which was we just didn't want to hold up the show because our spasms like would interfere. And it's not like we're embarrassed about our spasms. It's just that we know that not many people know about them, and they'd probably be like, what's going on? And yeah, we didn't want to delay the process of the interview. So, but luckily our spasms, you know, stayed in check, and we did the interview, and Ellen was really great. And she really heartfelt gave us a hug at the end and really genuinely said, thank you for what you're doing. I really think it's important, and keep doing it. So that was super cool of her. She was very, very receptive to what we put out there. And I think she gets it. You know, she gets the fact that she was also considered different in the entertainment industry, especially, and people didn't accept her at first. Even though, you know, she knew she would make it through, and she did. So there was a connection there. It was really cool.
Well, did you have to, I mean, to be during that time, and still you go to these different shows, the television interviews, and was there one moment where you went, oh, I'm doing this? Is there something?
Honestly, almost all of them were like that. There was one, I would say that one that really sticks out as far as the experience goes was doing the TCAs, which is like the Television Critics Association, where each network brings out some of the cast of their like upcoming new shows that they want to highlight for the television critics. And then the critics will write about it and like, you know, do press. And so it was like a big deal because Sundance was like, look, like the television critics are pretty jaded. They see like the same types of shows all the time. They probably won't even look up. They, you know, you'll go into this room, it'll be really intimidating, but, you know, just, you know, go on track of, you know, what we've been doing with press and getting out there the message that we want to get out there. And so we did that, but we were kind of nervous because we felt like there was a lot of pressure to influence these critics in a positive way. And little did we know, like afterwards, apparently, like our publicists and stuff said right afterwards that they had never seen the Critics' Choice room that quiet before, and that they were all really engaged and they asked really good questions. One of them said like, oh, well, this is what reality TV should be. Like, this is better than the Kardashians because you're like putting out a good message, you know? And we were like, yeah, exactly, you get it, you know, because we had no idea how everything would be perceived. We knew what we wanted to do with the show. We knew what the messaging was of our own personal, you know, missions in life, which were aligned with what Sundance wanted to do, which is one of the reasons we went with Sundance as our network, is because they said, look, we want to do what you're doing, you know, just your life is what we want to portray because you all have this positivity and this outlook on life to push through. And they got it. And not every network did. Like when we were, you know, pitching to other networks, some networks were like, oh, that's great, but how often do you get drunk and fight? You know, like, and it literally was like that. Like it was reality TV, and it was also reality TV very new. Reality TV has shifted a little bit into being a little bit more educational and a little bit more positive. And so that on top of, oh my gosh, disability, which was also not seen like that before, it was kind of, well, we'll put it out there and see what happens. And then it was at that moment when we went to the back room after the Critics' Choice and everyone was like freaking out, like, oh my God, did it. And like all the press came out, like all the people there wrote amazing, positive things. So that was cool.
That's it. And I know everybody had a second question. Who would like to go next?
On you.
Sure, I'll go.
Go for it.
What's a book that changed your life?
Great question.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a really good question. Man, thinking off the top of my head, I don't really know what to say.
I could answer that first if you want to.
I have like my favorite books, but then I'm kind of like, but it didn't really change my life much. But I can think of some books that were really influential. One is The Power of Now.
Power of Now.
Power of Now. The Power of Now. Super, super good book about being present and, being in the moment. Very, very good for learning how to focus and meditate and stuff. Also, there's a book called Moving Violations, which is by John Hockenberry, who is a broadcast journalist. He used to be a reporter for CNN, I believe. And he wrote a memoir, and he's in a wheelchair, and he had gotten paralyzed as a teenager. And his memoir was it was the first time I had read somebody else's like stories, basically, because this was even before I moved out to LA and met all the girls and my friends in wheelchairs. I'd never had another friend in a wheelchair really before that. People that I knew, but not people that I, hung out with all the time. But this book was really like that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, there is like some really funny things that can happen in our lives that make you think, and he has a lot of stories in there about accessibility, looking at accessibility in a different way rather than thinking, okay, it's just a physical way to get in. He talks about not just going to a place where everything's accessible as far as buildings, but also culturally. And that was the first time I actually learned to realize that, yeah, you know what? There's an accessibility issue with culture sometimes. And that was something that I learned about here, because he said that in New York, even, he would try to, if the elevator was broken, he would try to be getting up the stairs with his wheelchair, and nobody would ask him if he needed help, or no one would even look at him, because like here, the culture is, oh my gosh, like I'm going to insult that person. I can't even look at them, and then he says he goes to other countries where there's less accessible, there's no ADA, and he has a harder time getting physically in places, but the culture there, they're just like, oh, you need to get in here. Okay, cool. I'll help you. Like this. And that was super, super interesting and life-changing for me as far as perspective goes, especially as a wheelchair user and dealing with society.
Cool.
If I think of any more, I'll let you know.
I love that. It's like now I've got to like go get my bookshelf and say, okay, which is my. It is a difficult one sometimes, because sometimes you have so many that are in your head.
I'm thinking of an author, Mia, that you might like. He recently passed away. His name was Ram Dass, and he had a famous book called Be Here Now. If you've ever heard of that?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah.
I'll look it up for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm always up for book recommendations.
All right, everybody out there, go get that book and read it.
It's funny because I just started like a book club with my boss at my graphic design job, and it's so funny because her and I are about the same age, and we realized that there were so many books in high school and college that we like didn't read. Don't listen to that. Kid. I read every book in high school. I'm just kidding. But no, but there were definitely times where I had like cliff notes, and I remember thinking like, oh, this would probably be a good book someday. And now I'm going back and reading all those like classic books that I.
Now you did read To Kill a Mockingbird in high school, right?
Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, Great Gatsby was one of my favorites. But those honestly I read later on in life. Catcher in the Rye, like all these books, like I read a lot later, which maybe I appreciated more at that point. But it's interesting to read or even watch movies or TV shows where you see them at a specific age and you get a message, and then you watch it years later and then you get a completely different message from
Well,
it.
kind of what we were going back earlier about saying how we change,
Exactly.
reading it from where we were back then till now. You know, a big book for me was called Just Mercy by a lawyer and activist named Brian Stevenson. You've ever heard of him? He
No.
runs the Equal Justice Initiative, which is like an organization like the Southern Poverty Law Center. And he's the movie starred Jamie Foxx recently in the last year or two. And that was a book that really kind of just, it was very moving, very sad, very heartening, but also very uplifting at the same time.
I have one of those audio book onlines, and you get so many a month, and I can't wait to hear it. But I got the both Michelle and Barack's books, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, very popular of late. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you
Blair,
so much. I wrote that title down, Moving Violation. So that sounds
Yeah.
good one. Blair Webb.
Oh, no. I am, but
I'm nervous. I am nervous.
That's okay. We're all nervous times.
I am too.
That just means you're excited, Blair. You're not nervous. Just a
yeah.
Doing-
I think
I've been a fan of the Push Girls from the beginning. So I've been a fan of the Push Girls from the beginning because this show has representation of not only authentic disability, but also people of color and of people in the LGBT community. What do you think Hollywood can do to have more media like Push Girls?
Yeah, good question. I think that for one, casting and writing. I think those are really two big places where they're kind of, if you ask me, they're kind of waiting for each other to make the change. I've heard a lot of casting directors say, well, it's not really up to me, it's up to what I get from the writers or the producers or the directors. And then they'll say the same thing. Well, like I need casting directors to bring in people with disabilities. And then, so there's always this like kick the can kind of mentality, I think, instead of thinking, okay, we're all gonna commit to this. We're not gonna say like it's somebody else's job here. We're all, including us as actors, like really honing our craft and making sure that when we do get into the room, that we are making the impact so that they can see that we are as talented as we know we are. And it's kind of an effort on all ways. But also, yeah, I mean, networks too. It's not just one compartment. I've heard a lot of people say that, well, if just this was fixed. I don't think it's just this. I think it's, all right, we all are going to take an initiative and we're all going to do it together. And then we're going to see what happens. And I guarantee you there'll be major change when that happens. And I think more and more with reality, because audiences are used to now seeing more people that are representatives of society, and that networks actually see that works and audiences are receptive to it. It's kind of helping grow that in scripted projects too now. However, there's still so much work to be done. And the truth is that we know our experiences and we know our stories, but other people are afraid to kind of take on those stories when they don't know. So I think it's really important for us, even if we're actors, to make connections with writers and to make connections with directors and producers and explain to them why it's important that they think of these things. Because it takes forethought. It's not an afterthought. By the time it's an afterthought, it's too late. Then it's just the status quo, and the status quo is not going to do anything for the world. So I think, if we all take on our own responsibilities, we will make change.
I mean, well, your show blasted the doors open.
I was
got us to the next level.
Yeah, like that was really the goal. I mean, it really was to just kind of say, hey, look, like this is not, first of all, it was, showing that it was breaking stereotypes of what entertainment thought that people with disabilities had to be in their own mind, and then once we were out there and there was that reception and there are so many people with disabilities that did speak up and say, hey, like this show is what we've been waiting for, then they saw that there was an audience, so I think we also have to be really vocal as a community on social media and on our own platforms to make sure that our voices are heard. There's a lot of other communities that have gotten pretty far as representation goes because they've spoken up, and they've spoken up together.
Yeah. Ashley Anderson, you have another question?
What was it like being on a real series?
Yeah, what was it like? For me, it was a little nerve-wracking at first because I'm actually a really shy person naturally. I was kind of born shy. And I had to grow out of that, especially once I got paralyzed, because I knew that was the way that I would have to be able to succeed in life, was to speak up and to make friends and like to continue to be myself, but also to be out there, and to not, shy away from society. So I kind of trained myself to get a little more used to that. But being on a reality show is like that on steroids, where there were certain things in my life that was like, oh my gosh, do I want to like put that out there to the world? And at the end of the day, my answer was always yes, because it is for a greater purpose. And the greater purpose is always bigger, in my opinion. That's how I live my life. I do listen to my own instincts, and I don't do things that make me uncomfortable. However, when there are things where I realize it's just an insecure hang up or something that I have up to myself, and if I need to get over that to make more of a difference and to help society in any particular way, then I'm going to do it. So it kind of evolved from there. I would say the first season was harder in some ways because we weren't used to the way filming went, right? Like we weren't used to cameras in our face all the time. I mean, we were, in the sense, used to people staring and watching us, because that just comes with the territory when you have chairs. You get looked at a lot. And that's similar, in the show, because you have like eyes watching you. But then the crew, and I said this at the Push Girls reunion, the crew really became our family. And that included like the production team and the people that were the camera people. And once that happened, it was like, all right, well, it's just like having my brother in the room, and it just went from there. And really, honestly, the fans and the people that encouraged us and really were receptive to the show, that also pushed us more. It definitely helped me open up more, especially in second season, to be able to make sure that I'm putting, everything out there that I can, and being the most vulnerable so that people can learn and experience and relate.
Davaughn Morgan, I just love these visits.
Fun.
Hello. Okay, now the first time I got tongue-tied, I don't want to get tongue-tied again this time.
You absolutely can, though.
Okay. Now, since speaking of best friends, did you and Angela get to like experience a movie, or like get to hang out off set, do stuff that did you guys like either go out to eat off set, or maybe go to a movie or to a concert or something?
Oh yeah, that was one of the good things about filming is that we, you know, we were really close friends, but doing the filming, we got to hang out a ton more than we would naturally be able to be because it was our job. So we would see each other way more. We talk about this now. It's like, you know, then life takes over and then, you know, we realize we haven't seen each other as much. And because of the show, there is a bond that we'll have, you know, with all of our cast members that will never be touched because it was something so new and unreal and an experience that that we got to share together. And you know, even though for certain media interviews, sometimes they would break us up in twos, and it's funny because like originally, me and Tiffany were doing a lot of interviews together, and Auntie and Angela were, and then that kind of like became like more standard, and then they switched it up, and then I got to do an interview with Angela, and I remember when we did the interview, we were like, oh my gosh, we like never do interviews together. This is so fun. And so we specifically requested even after that, like, oh, and we realized that those are also really cool experiences to share. And then and then after that, if we had free time, we'd go out and party and talk about the day and our experience and the fact that our legs didn't spasm after Ellen. And so yeah, there was plenty of time to debrief and talk and hang out and go and do things together that were not filmed, but still were opportunities for us to have fun and be ourselves. Not that we were ourselves when we were filming, it was just, you know, you have to be on. There's a different vibe there.
We have over 100 students at Performing Arts Studio West. And then of course we have Meet the Biz and then the whole YouTube community. So what would you tell to somebody who is out there and has a dream and is maybe afraid to go for it, but they still want to go for it? What would you say to them?
That brings me back to my other quote, which is, fear will disable you and courage will enable you. Because, you know, I say that a lot. I could have definitely been paralyzed. And I don't mean that as in just my body. I mean paralyzed in life. And paralyzed in life would have been from fear. If I had let fear stop me from doing anything I wanted to do, that would have been a disability. This wheelchair and whatever you have that makes you different is not a disability, because that's just part of you. And that's the tools that you're given to make sure that you do what you're supposed to accomplish. So take it, own it, and do it no matter what. Every time you think you're afraid, say, oh, here's this, Tele, this is a tie into another book. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways.
Feel the fear and do it anyways.
Yes,
Okay.
I don't know the author's name off the top of my head, but I'm sure you can Google it. But that is such a great motto. Feel the fear, because I think that we get afraid of that feeling, right? Like, oh, I don't want to feel that. And that's just a sign that maybe you're supposed to be doing that, because that's going to make you grow. And you know, if I had said I can't all those times back in high school when I first got paralyzed, like I wouldn't be here right now doing everything that I love to do. I would have let all of that stop me, and that bad talk in my brain. So yeah, that's my advice to everybody is don't let the fear disable you. Use your courage. You got courage. Everyone's got the courage inside them to use, and that's our tool to overcome.